this thing sucks. And then you get the game and you're like, what? 9.314159. No, nobody ever does that. Hey, it's Chris. So, unpopular opinions. Board game unpopular opinions with some rants and a little bit of raves thrown in there all in one. Now, again, we have to preface this by always saying unpopular opinions. No, these are not your Munchkin isn't the best board game ever. Catan is overrated. I don't like Monopoly. Nothing like that. Actual hobby interests that I think are worthless or not something that should be glorified, honored, or raised up. But yet somehow we have found ourselves there. And I'm going to tell you 3 of my unpopular board game opinions in this video. Truly unpopular things. Not popular things that are negative. Those are different. Unpopular. Think I'm wrong? Debate me in the comment section down below. Tell me I'm wrong and tell me why. I dare you. You ready? First one, right? Board game ratings are, for the most part, utterly worthless. Right? We're starting off on a hot foot right here. Board game ratings, well, they're overrated. And specifically, the thing that really irks me is the portrayal of these as the end-all be-all. So-and-so rated this a game, blah, 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 right? I see that even on sales posts. People trying to sell games. So-and-so rated this game, so you should buy it from me. Like those, what? Those two things make no sense whatsoever. Because you're selling it. Because obviously, clearly, that recommendation worked for you, right? And you're then trying to use it to sell it to me because you made a mistake on believing that recommendation was the perfect fit for you, right? Holy cow. The other thing, and I remember right before I got into this hobby, right before I got into the YouTube side of things, I saw this a couple places and I actually asked a couple people. And I asked 2 people in particular, and I'm not going to say who it was. But the thing that struck me in both of these situations, I see a lot of this, so let's ask, because it really is burning in my mind. As a person who is very centered in math and science as a background, one of the things that we're taught, especially in your undergraduate studies, is the use of significant digits. Meaning I am giving so many digits to a number, implying that each of these has significant meaning and significant value, and that is the reason I need as many of them as I do. Meaning with these figures, you are trying to contribute a degree of accuracy of the value, right? So I look at this and I go, okay, a number rating, 0 to 5, a 0 to 10, okay, 1, 6, 7, 9 makes sense. Okay. You know what? Let's even go halvesies. 8.5, 7.5, 4.5. Okay. I understand that. I understand that as well too, right? We get that on star ratings, on other reviews elsewhere. The thing I don't start to understand and not really get the purpose of whatsoever, 7.25 or even 7.27, right? Because truth be told, there is no scientific method that's going into figuring out a 7.27. If I'm getting a 7.27 from a chemistry equation that I'm figuring out, or from a mathematically derived derivative equation of whatever it may be, right? There is meaning to that third significant figure there of the 7, the 700ths versus the 500ths potentially, especially like I said with chemistry, right? You really got to be careful when you're measuring those things out, and that makes a meaningful difference. What the freaking deuce is a difference between a board game that's rated 7.27 and 7.25? Because there's that out there. Or even 7.2 and 7.25. Or 7.5 and 7.25. I guarantee you cannot explicitly elicit the difference between those two in a meaningful manner. right? It's a subjective opinion. So I'm not going to tell you, you can't give it whatever value you want, but it's not reproducible. It's not like you can calculate it again. So realistically, is there actually meaning behind such a difference? And I'm going to say no. And the other aspect of things is, just like I said with the selling example, they're kind of worthless because overall, right, when you look at any other media, for example, when I'm going on to Rotten Tomatoes later tonight to figure out whether or not the new show that I want to binge on Netflix is worth it, I get to look at, this is the score, right? But the score isn't always reflective of the individual scores, because some of the criticisms or critiques are just whatever, right? I've got the horror guy who specializes in horror shows and movies giving a middling to bad review on the Korean reality show that isn't up their ilk anyway. And you go, well, is that really that useful? Right? If you get a war game review from me, how pertinent or useful is that going to be? Or is the bias, we haven't talked about that at all, bias, affecting that significantly? So then when it gets aggregated, when you see the aggregation on the Board Game Geek side of things, is that really meaningfully reflected? Because especially again, with rankings to go along with ratings, those are heavily tied into each other, and it's a made up algorithm in the first place. So that's all this is. So no one's number is going to be great for you. Don't look at numbers. Numbers are a horrible way to look at your board games, right? I don't look, maybe you do. I'm going to speak for myself again. When I'm looking at these games behind me, right? I don't go, 9.75, 9.63, 8.42, 9.777776, 9.314159. No, nobody ever does that. Nobody, right? You go, wow, that's a freaking amazing game. I would keep that forever. I think that's probably in my top 25. This is my second favorite cooperative game of all time. That's what you're saying. So you don't look at it any other way. So why the emphasis? Because also it gets clicks. It drives business, top 10s, right? Because I can't always, differentiate which one is number 2 and number 4 because they're blurred together. I just talked about it the other month when I was looking at my top games of, I don't know, whatever month it was, September maybe, where I said on any given day, week, month, year, century, millennia, this game was 1A, 1B, and then 1C. But I could easily be flipping them around in short order either way. So that is my thoughts on ratings right now. Board game trailers. Board game trailers are completely and utterly worthless. I don't know why companies continue to spend money on this. Those little videos, even at the top of crowdfunding pages, why? I feel like it was a Kickstarter thing before it was a hobby crowdfunding board game side of things. And then people kind of copied that when, at least on the crowdfunding side of things, they've just continued this weird tradition of giving me cinematic gameplay that doesn't reflect the actual on the table, right? Just like with video games, where you see these cinematic trailers of Final Fantasy 37.5, and you look at it and you go, whoa, those graphics are amazing, holy cow. And then you get the game and you're like, what? It's sort of like the mobile ads on any of the game apps that you see, right? Where they've got this cinematic trailer that's like, this is what the game is. And you go to the App Store and you download it and it's like, this thing sucks. This doesn't look anything like what you showed me. Yeah, that's right. They bait and switched you and you fell for it. And I don't think it's necessarily a bait and switch side of things here with board games, but publishers. I mean, couldn't you be spending that money elsewhere? Because I don't see that getting the YouTube clicks. I think you're better off sending your money to one of the paid previews. And you know how I feel about paid previews on this channel. And at least getting money spent there, because at least then you'll maybe get some clicks. Because, where's that video showing up? It's not like you're saying, hey, Chris, would you show that trailer on your channel so we can get some, mutual reciprocal. Actually, you know what? Any board game publisher wants to rent my channel to get your trailer played. I'm up for rent. I could do that. Woo! So the third one here, again, is going to be maybe a mixed one for you, but I also feel like I'm an old man shouting at the clouds because I don't get this obsession with trying to make content shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter. The shorter you make it, the more concise, the more precise, the also less amount of information you can have out there. There are very few ways to do that extremely well. And there are some people that do that extremely well. But the vast majority of your Insta, TikTok, whatevers just feels like it's the loss of attention span as our society, nay, let alone even our hobby as a whole. I mean, how much useful information, just like we were talking about the trailers a second ago, is that little less than 60-second paid preview on TikTok flashing between things of stuff that you don't even know what's going on, trying to hype you up. The two similarities of both of them are significant. And I also don't understand it even sometimes from a publisher side of things because, yeah, you might get people scrolling and thumbing those things, but I guess that's my question. Does that actually convert to sales? Or are those just the constant doom scrollers on insert your social media side of things here? I feel like you have to actually realize to understand the nuances of anything. We as a society are obsessed with this summarization, likely as a result of the speed demanded by capital, from our headlines to our social media, Twitter being a very egregious example of this with its character limit. Right? TikTok along the same way, that people take in these fragments of knowledge, run with them. You can twist their meaning however you so choose into a kaleidoscope that basically just dilutes the message into ubiquitousness or nothingness of, significant value. Brevity is good. Don't get me wrong here. Sometimes though, the message, even when it's communicated with such utmost shortness, requires more length. And I think the rush to get stuff out sometimes overrules that in our hobby. I just did a news video and I said, you know what? If I want to get in all of the stuff that is worthwhile, that I feel like if you're going to watch a video from me to learn about what's going on, a 30-second one-line snippet of Witcher expansions gets new details, XYZ, isn't really always terribly the most helpful thing, right? I mean, sometimes you can do it that way, but it's also not really the most helpful because that's why I do those sort of things. Not to make sure that you can get it as fast as you can get it, but that when you're getting it, it's actually going to be beneficial if you're going to take the time for it in the first place. And they might not be super popular, but some of those playthroughs from like Paul and John, right? They're very helpful in figuring out whether or not you like or will not like the actual mechanistic approach to the game. But nobody likes to go, oh, geez, it's a 4-hour video. I don't know if I can. I'd rather spend an hour of my time and save my money than vice versa. Tell me I'm wrong. Peace out. Stay classy.